the notification lit up his phone at 11:47 p.m. A simple message that would change everything. I hope you're still awake. I've been wanting to show you this for a long time. Then came the photo, not what he expected, not what anyone would expect. David's hands trembled as he stared at the screen, tears welling in his eyes. After 2 years of raising his son alone, he thought his heart had forgotten how to feel anything beyond exhaustion and duty. He was wrong. If you're wondering what was in that photo and how it transformed this broken man's life, stay with me until the end. This story might just change how you see the world around you. If it touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that remind us of the unexpected ways healing finds us when we need it most. David Collins had mastered the art of functioning while broken. Every morning, he woke before the sun, made breakfast for his 8-year-old son Ethan, packed his lunch, and sent him off to school with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Then he'd drive to the architectural firm where he worked, design buildings that would outlast him, and return home in time to help with homework and make dinner. After Ethan went to bed, David would sit alone in the darkness of his living room, the silence pressing in from all sides. It had been 2 years since the accident that took his wife Rebecca. 2 years of raising their son alone. 2 years of answering Ethan's increasingly difficult questions about why some kids had 2 parents and he only had one. 2 years of pretending he was okay when he was anything but. They had moved to Willow Creek 6 months ago, a fresh start, his sister had called it. A chance to escape the ghost of Rebecca that haunted every corner of their old house. The neighborhood was quiet, filled with young families and retirees. Their house was smaller than their previous one, but it had a yard where Ethan could play and a good school district. It was practical, sensible, the kind of decision David had become known for making. The neighbors had welcomed them with polite smiles and occasional invitations that David invariably declined. He had become expert at keeping people at a distance, at building walls that no one could scale. No one except Ethan, who somehow managed to make David laugh despite everything. And then there was Anna Martinez from next door. David had first noticed her the day they moved in, a woman about his age with warm brown eyes and a smile that seemed genuine rather than pitying. She had brought over a homemade lasagna and introduced herself as a high school art teacher who had lived in the neighborhood for 5 years. "If you need anything, I'm right next door," she had said, not lingering or prying like so many others did. Over the following months, Anna had become a quiet presence in their lives. She would wave when they passed each other getting the mail. Sometimes she would bring over extra cookies she had baked with her art students. Once, when David had to work late, she had offered to watch Ethan until he got home. "Dad, I like Ms. Anna," Ethan had said that night as David tucked him into bed. "She doesn't look at me funny like other grown-ups do." David knew exactly what his son meant. Most adults looked at Ethan with that particular blend of sympathy and discomfort that came from not knowing what to say to a child who had lost his mother. "She's nice," David agreed, keeping his voice neutral. "She showed me her paintings today. She's really good. She said she could teach me if I wanted." David hesitated. The idea of Ethan spending more time with Anna made him uneasy, not because he didn't trust her, but because it felt like opening a door he had deliberately kept closed. "We'll see," he said finally, kissing Ethan's forehead. "Sleep tight, buddy." As winter settled over Willow Creek, bringing with it shorter days and longer nights, David found himself noticing Anna more. The way she hummed to herself while shoveling snow from her driveway. How she had strung colorful lights around her porch that somehow didn't look garish like the other houses on the street. The sound of her laugh when she was talking to someone on the phone in her backyard. One evening in December, David was struggling to untangle a mess of Christmas lights when Anna appeared at the edge of his yard. "Need a hand?" she asked, her breath visible in the cold air. David's instinct was to refuse, to say he had it under control even though he clearly didn't. Instead, he found himself nodding. "If you don't mind." Together, they worked in companionable silence, untangling the lights and stringing them along the eaves of the house. When they finished, David stepped back to look at their handiwork. "Not bad," he said, surprising himself with a small smile. Not bad at all, Anna agreed. Ethan will love it. Thank you, David said, suddenly awkward. For helping. Anna shrugged. That's what neighbors are for. She turned to go, then paused. I'm having a small Christmas gathering next weekend. Nothing fancy, just a few friends and neighbors. You and Ethan are welcome to join. David's refusal was automatic. Thank you, but we usually keep things quiet during the holidays. Anna nodded, not looking surprised or offended. The invitation stands if you change your mind. That night, as David sat in his usual spot in the darkened living room, he found himself looking out the window toward Anna's house. Through a gap in her curtains, he could see her moving around her living room, a paintbrush in her hand as she worked on a canvas. There was something captivating about her focus, about the way she seemed completely absorbed in her work. The following week, as the Christmas gathering approached, David was surprised to find himself reconsidering Anna's invitation. It had been so long since he and Ethan had done anything social that wasn't school-related. Maybe it would be good for them, for Ethan especially, to spend an evening surrounded by festivity and warmth. Dad, can we go to Miss Anna's party? Ethan asked the morning of the gathering, as if reading his thoughts. David looked at his son, at the hopeful expression on his face, and felt something inside him shift. Would you like to? Ethan nodded emphatically. She said there would be hot chocolate with those tiny marshmallows. David smiled despite himself. Well, we can't miss that, can we? The party was nothing like David had feared. There were no pitying glances, no awkward questions about how they were holding up. Just a small group of people enjoying good food and conversation in a home filled with art and color. Anna's living room walls were covered with paintings, landscapes, abstracts, and portraits that seemed to capture not just appearances but emotions. Did you do all of these? David asked as Anna handed him a mug of mulled wine. She nodded. Art is my therapy. My way of processing the world. They're beautiful, he said, meaning it. His eyes lingered on a painting of a stormy sea, the waves captured in shades of blue and gray that somehow conveyed both turmoil and strange beauty. That one I painted after my divorce, Anna said, following his gaze. It was a difficult time. David looked at her, surprised by her candor. I'm sorry. Anna shrugged. It was 5 years ago. Sometimes the hardest endings lead to necessary beginnings. Before David could respond, Ethan appeared at his side, his mouth ringed with chocolate. Dad, Miss Anna has a tree house in her backyard. Can I go see it? It's too dark now, Anna said gently, but maybe another time, if your dad says it's okay. Ethan looked up at David with pleading eyes. Can I, Dad? Please. David found himself nodding. Sure, buddy. Another time. As winter gave way to spring, another time became many times. Ethan started spending Saturday afternoons at Anna's, learning to paint and helping in her garden. David would watch from his kitchen window as his son laughed and talked more animatedly than he had in years. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, Anna began to breach the walls David had built. It started with small things, a text asking if Ethan could stay for dinner, an invitation to join them for a movie night, a question about whether David could help her move a heavy bookshelf. One rainy Sunday in April, David found himself in Anna's kitchen, chopping vegetables while she stirred something that smelled amazing on the stove. Ethan was in the living room, absorbed in a new video game Anna had introduced him to. He seems happier, Anna said quietly, nodding toward Ethan. David followed her gaze, watching his son's face light up with concentration and joy. He is. Thanks to you. Anna shook her head. I haven't done anything special. You've given him space to be a kid again. To not feel like he has to worry about me all the time. Anna looked at him, her eyes serious. And what about you, David? Are you happier? The question caught him off guard. No one had asked him that in a long time. Everyone always asked how he was doing, how he was coping, how he was managing. But happiness? That seemed like a luxury he wasn't entitled to anymore. I don't know, he answered honestly. I'm not sure I remember what that feels like. Anna's expression softened. Maybe it's time to find out. That night, after Ethan was asleep, David sat in his usual spot in the dark living room. But instead of staring into nothing, he found himself looking at Anna's house again. This time, he could see her in what must be her studio, working on a large canvas. Without allowing himself to overthink, he pulled out his phone and texted her, "Thank you for today." 3 dots appeared almost immediately, then, "You're welcome. It was nice having you both here." David hesitated, then typed, "What are you working on?" "Something new. Not sure what it is yet." "That's the best part, discovering as you go." He smiled at that. "I've never been good with uncertainty." "That's because you're an architect. You need blueprints and plans. Artists need mystery and surprise." Their text conversation continued late into the night. David found himself sharing things he hadn't told anyone, how he sometimes woke up reaching for Rebecca, how he worried he was failing Ethan, how he felt guilty on the rare occasions when he didn't think about Rebecca for a whole day. Anna listened without judgment, offering neither platitudes nor solutions, just understanding. And in turn, she shared her own struggles, the pain of her divorce, her decision not to have children with a man she knew wasn't right for her, her complicated relationship with her parents who had never understood her art. As spring turned to summer, these late-night conversations became a lifeline for David. Sometimes they texted, sometimes they sat on Anna's back porch after Ethan was asleep, talking in low voices under the stars. David began to notice things about Anna he hadn't before, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled, the small paint stains that always seemed to be on her hands no matter how much she washed them. One evening in July, as they sat on her porch swing, Anna asked, "Do you think you'll ever want to date again?" David tensed. It was a question he had deliberately avoided thinking about. "I don't know. It feels disloyal somehow." Anna was quiet for a moment. "I don't think love works that way. It's not a finite resource that runs out if you share it." "Maybe," David said, not convinced. "But it's not just about me. It's about Ethan too. I can't just bring someone new into his life." "Of course not," Anna agreed. "But Ethan is resilient. And he deserves to see his father happy." David looked at her, at the genuine concern in her eyes, and felt a flutter of something he hadn't experienced in years. Fear, yes, but also possibility. "What about you?" he asked, deflecting. "Are you dating anyone?" Anna shook her head. "Not for a while now. I've been focused on my art, on building a life I love regardless of whether I'm sharing it with someone." "That sounds healthy," David said, meaning it. Anna smiled. "It is. But it doesn't mean I've closed myself off to possibilities." The word hung between them, charged with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. As summer progressed, David noticed a shift in his relationship with Anna. There was a new awareness between them, a current of unspoken feelings that made their interactions both more meaningful and more fraught. He found himself making excuses to see her, to talk to her, even as a part of him pulled back in fear. One August evening, Anna invited David and Ethan to join her for a meteor shower. They spread blankets in her backyard and lay side by side, watching the night sky. Ethan fell asleep between them, his breathing deep and even. "I used to do this with my dad when I was little," Anna whispered, careful not to wake Ethan. "He taught me all the constellations." "Rebecca loved the stars too," David said, surprised by how easily her name came to his lips. "She used to say that looking at the night sky put everything in perspective." Anna turned her head to look at him. "She sounds wise." "She was," David said, feeling the familiar ache of loss, but noticing that it was different now, less raw, more like an old injury that still twinged but no longer debilitated. They fell silent, watching as streaks of light cut across the darkness above them. David felt a strange peace settle over him, a sense that maybe, just maybe, there could be life after loss. The next day, Anna left for a 2-week art retreat in the mountains. No cell service, she warned him. But I'll be back before you know it. David was surprised by how much he missed her. The house next door seemed empty without her presence. Ethan asked about her daily, wondering what she was painting, if she was having fun, when exactly she would return. "You really like Ms. Anna, don't you?" David asked one night as he tucked Ethan in. Ethan nodded sleepily. "She makes you smile, Dad." "Like, real smiles." David was taken aback by his son's perception. "Does that make you happy?" "Yeah," Ethan said, his eyes drifting closed. "Mom would want you to smile for real." David sat with those words long after Ethan had fallen asleep. Would Rebecca want that? He thought about her, her generosity, her capacity for joy, her fierce love for both him and Ethan. Yes, he realized. She would want them both to be happy, even if she couldn't be part of that happiness. The night before Anna was due to return, David couldn't sleep. He paced his living room, thinking about what he wanted to say to her, how he wanted to explain the journey he'd been on these past months. At 11:47 p.m., his phone lit up with a notification. "I hope you're still awake. I've been wanting to show you this for a long time." A photo appeared, not what he expected, not what anyone would expect. It was a painting, clearly Anna's work, of David and Ethan. They were sitting on a park bench, David's arm around his son's shoulders, both of them laughing at something outside the frame. But what took David's breath away was how she had captured them, surrounded by a soft, golden light that seemed to emanate from within them. And in that light, almost transparent but unmistakably there, was the outline of a woman with her hands resting gently on their shoulders. Rebecca. David's hands trembled as he stared at the screen, tears welling in his eyes. After 2 years of raising his son alone, he thought his heart had forgotten how to feel anything beyond exhaustion and duty. He was wrong. He typed with shaking fingers, "How did you know?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "I didn't paint her consciously. She appeared as I was working. But when I saw her, I knew she was telling me something. That she's still with you both, but that she wants you to be happy. To live." David couldn't speak, couldn't type, could only stare at the image that somehow captured everything he had been feeling but couldn't express. Another message appeared, "I'm coming home early. I'll be there in an hour. If you want to talk, I'll be waiting." That hour was the longest of David's life. He moved through the house in a daze, checking on Ethan, making sure he was still asleep, then returning to the living room to stare at the painting on his phone. How had Anna seen what he couldn't? How had she understood what he needed before he did? When headlights swept across his living room wall, David went to the window. Anna's car was pulling into her driveway. He watched as she got out, looking tired from the drive but somehow radiant in the moonlight. She glanced toward his house, as if sensing his presence, then walked to her front door. Before he could second-guess himself, David was out his door and crossing the lawn between their houses. Anna turned at the sound of his footsteps, her expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "David," David, she said softly, her voice carrying in the night air. He stopped a few feet from her, his heart pounding. "The painting, how did you know?" Anna's eyes were gentle. "I paint what I feel. And when I look at you and Ethan, I see both your loss and your light." "I've been afraid," David admitted, his voice breaking. "Afraid that moving forward means leaving her behind." "She'll never be left behind," Anna said, stepping closer. "She's part of who you both are." David looked at this woman who had somehow slipped past his defenses, who had seen him, truly seen him, when he was invisible to everyone else. I don't know if I'm ready, he whispered. Anna reached out, her hand warm against his cheek. We don't have to rush. We have time. In that moment, standing in the moonlight with Anna's touch anchoring him to the present, David felt something he thought he'd never feel again, hope. Not just for Ethan's future, but for his own. The next morning, Ethan found them sitting together on the porch swing, talking quietly as the sun rose. His sleepy confusion gave way to a smile that lit up his entire face. Does this mean Miss Anna is going to be around more? He asked, climbing between them. David looked at Anna, at the woman who had shown him that his heart wasn't broken beyond repair, just waiting for the right moment to heal. If that's okay with you, he said to his son. Ethan nodded emphatically. Mom would like her. She always said we needed more art in our lives. David pulled his son close, feeling tears prick his eyes. Yes, she did. As the three of them sat together watching the sunrise, David thought about the unexpected journey that had brought them here. How grief had nearly consumed him but hadn't defined him. How love could find its way through the smallest cracks in the walls we build around our hearts. How sometimes, the most profound healing begins with something as simple as a painting that sees not just who we are, but who we could be. Sometimes, the most beautiful stories begin with a single photo and a heart that, despite everything, is finally ready to heal. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more emotional journeys that remind us it's never too late for healing and second chances. Share in the comments if you've ever experienced unexpected healing in your own life. Remember, even the most broken hearts can mend when the right person helps us see the light we still carry within.